3 refugee camps have been expelled from the area, with the Defense Minister, Israel Katz, saying the Israeli army will occupy the territory for a year. For more on the situation in the Middle East, let's bring in the President Emerita of the Middle East Policy Council, Gina Abercrombie-Winstanley. So, Gina, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So, for Israel, we've seen delaying the release of over 600 Palestinians, Hamas shutting down those talks until they are freed. And then you have the U.S. envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, set to go to Israel next week. Can he break that logjam?
Thank you. Well, I believe he can. We have seen from the very beginning, exactly as you said, this is fragile. Many missteps, some hurdles along the way. Certainly the releases of the hostages have been very difficult for Israelis to watch before they've made it home. And of course, the release of Palestinian prisoners, even more important for Palestinians. So there have been hurdles, there have been stumbles along the way, but we've gotten much further than we thought we would from the very beginning. It was always clear that it was going to have a lot of hand-holding, not only by the United States with regard to Israel, but with others in the region, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, and of course Qatar, to keep both these parties on track. With the special envoy heading to the region later this week, it is entirely possible. We've heard him say he expects Israel to move forward. There may be this delay, but the Israeli people want those hostages home. So the prime minister is going to have that kind of pressure on him, both domestically and from those in the region and the United States.
But ultimately, do you think that Israel wants peace because they've sent tanks into the West Bank and told troops to be ready for an extended stay?
Yeah. Well, that is the question. And of course, what kind of peace is it going to be? We're talking about the long term of rebuilding the Gaza Strip. It's going to take Israel to say yes to that. We've seen the incursions in the West Bank, 40,000 people displaced so far. We've seen the Israelis say that they want to demilitarize Syria, that they're going to stay in Syrian territory, that they've delayed their departure from Lebanese territory. That's a lot to be juggling for one state, even with the support of the United States. Many of Israel's allies from the United States and from those in the region that are looking for long-term peace will be advising greater caution as they move forward.
But the stance from the U.S. it has been a little bit confusing of late. We have Steve Witkoff going to Israel, but then, and Trump, we saw initially putting a lot of pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to get that phase 1 of the deal, then saying he doesn't mind what Israel now does, whether it continues on to phase 2 or resumes the war. So isn't that, how do you square the two?
Donald Trump. It is President Donald Trump, and he often says things that are at odds with each other. We have to watch what those actions turn out to be. And what he's saying publicly may be very different than what he's saying privately, to put additional pressure on Hamas to do better with those releases of hostages. But he's also said that he wants to be a peace president. And when the prime minister was not moving quickly enough to get the ceasefire in place, we saw Donald Trump and his envoy get that moving forward. So we shouldn't doubt his abilities if he determines this is going to help him achieve what he wants, which is that stature of bringing peace to the Middle East. He's hearing from his allies, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris in the region about what they want as well and what it's going to take to get that deal that he's been looking for.
And I want to pick up on that point there about cooperation from the wider regions in the Middle East, because he's pitched Gaza as the Riviera of the Middle East, but that hasn't had support from those Arab leaders. It would displace over 2 million Palestinians. And we've seen that the Arab leaders met in Saudi Arabia to discuss a counter proposal. What could that look like?
Well, the president, again, Donald Trump, putting a proposal out like that, a proposal, it wasn't a plan, actually has jettisoned the leaders in the region to come together and figure out the way forward. We've heard, 15 years, 20 years, the president seems to think it's going to take a long time to rebuild the Gaza Strip. But I remind everyone, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, after nuclear bombs were dropped on those cities, were rebuilt within 10 years. So if that can happen with the right things in place, it will not take that long. Certainly the plan that the Arab nations are looking at will require a great deal of funding, will require a great deal of political lift. And so the payoff has got to be strong for all of the parties combined. For Israel, what that deal looks like, peace, real peace in the region. For those in the region, additional military relationships, security guarantees from the United States, and for the Palestinians, a state at some point in the future. All of those things need to be in place. It's going to take an incredible amount of diplomacy to get it done, but it can be done.
All right. Thank you so much, Gina, for